Today, we're in Vicksburg, Mississippi. But how did Vicksburg get its name? We're down here at the very first basically incorporated streets of Vicksburg, and it was bought in 1812 by a Reverend Newitt Vick, and he bought it from the U.S. government. But he dies in 1819 of yellow fever, and we've talked about yellow fever before. We're along the Mississippi River here, but his brother picks up the cause and lays out a city named Vicksburg in honor of him. And it's going to be very instrumental in the Civil War. So let's walk around Vicksburg and see all the sights. Of Achuca. This is a historical home here in Vicksburg, Mississippi. I'm standing on what they consider a carriage rock. So you bring the carriage up and women could step onto the rock to get into the carriage easier. But this house was built in 1830 by a local politician. Historically, though, in 1868, the older brother of Jefferson Davis owned this home, Joseph Davis. And when Jefferson Davis was released from prison on Christmas Day, 1868, by President Johnson, came back here to this home. So Echuca means happy place in the Choctaw language, which this is a Native American area, and that's where it derives its name. On Christmas Day, 1868, President Johnson decides to pardon all the Confederates, anyone involved in the Confederate rebellion, and that includes President Jefferson Davis. They're allowed to go back to their homes, and Jefferson Davis comes here because this is where his brother lives. He greets the people on this balcony. They say it's the last public address that Jefferson Davis ever gave, and it happened here in Vicksburg, Mississippi. McRaven House, and this is considered the most haunted house in Mississippi. Now, you see the address is 1445 Harrison Street, but a long time ago, this was McRaven Street, and that's why it's got the word McRaven as the name of the house. Now, this used to also be Walnut Hills, Mississippi. It's now Vicksburg, Mississippi. This house was built circa 1797 by an Andrew Glass, who was a highwayman. And if you don't remember what a highwayman is, we talk about that in the Meriwether Lewis video, that he might have been killed by highwaymen. Those are people who would rob people along famous trails here in Mississippi or any area where there's famous trails. But Andrew Glass was a famous highwayman, and this house was along the Natchez Trace. So people would stop here as they're going from Natchez, Mississippi, up to Nashville, and he would rob them. Eventually, he was murdered by his wife. So a sheriff bought the house in 1836, and his wife died in childbirth in the bedroom above the main living area. She was only 15 years old. And then during the Civil War, this was used as a Confederate hospital. It's right along the railroad, so it made it very convenient as a Confederate hospital, and soldiers were put in the yard area and in the house. Why is it considered the most haunted house? They say that the ghost of Andrew Glass still haunts the area. Of course, the Confederate hospital. They have had famous TV shows here to experience the ghosts here, but you can come here and visit. You can have dinner here, or you can stay overnight. And then you can decide, is it the most haunted house in Mississippi? Vicksburg has this mural here on the wall because the first person to ever bottle Coca Cola comes from Vicksburg, Mississippi. Let's turn the corner and go to the candy shop, where the candy owner had the idea to bottle Coca Cola and bring it to the masses. In 1894, German immigrant Joseph Weinenhardt wanted to bring the beverage to people in the rural areas of Mississippi. So he had the idea to bottle it, and that's what he did. He bottled Coca-Cola for the very first time to bring it to all the people who lived in the outskirts of Vicksburg, Mississippi. Nowadays, very few people even get their Coke from fountain drinks and get it from bottles and cans. Mississippi has these beautiful murals along the riverfront that they tell you the history of Vicksburg, and they do such a great job of doing it. Each one has a painting and then a little explanation in front of it. So take your time, walk it. I'm going to highlight a couple of them that I think are so fascinating and history you might not know about Vicksburg. First is Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. He's from Vicksburg. His home was just south of Vicksburg. And in February of 1861, a messenger comes up to him and tells him that he's been elected the president of the Confederate States of America. He's out pruning roses with his wife, Verena, and their children are on the front porch. Now, Walk with History has an entire video from his house, the White House of the Confederacy, in Richmond, Virginia, but he will leave the next day for Montgomery, Alabama to be sworn in as the president of the Confederacy. You cannot not talk about the Civil War and talk about Vicksburg, Mississippi. Vicksburg, Mississippi had seceded from the Union. They were part of the Confederacy, and this area is going to become under siege from the Union in 1863. And Grant will eventually take the town on July 4th, 1863, around the same time as Gettysburg. President Lincoln considers both of these the turning point of the war. The Union now has control of the Mississippi River and has cut the South in half. What's great about this depiction here, it just shows you how much Vicksburg gave to the Southern cause. It's considered the city that gave the most in terms of life and destruction during the Civil War. That siege lasts for more than 40 days, and it took bombardment of artillery and lost many lives. The biggest maritime disaster in America that nobody knows about, the Sultana. The Sultana left here April 24th, 1865 with over 2,300 Union prisoners of war to bring them back home after the end of the Civil War. This ship is only meant to hold about 300, so putting on 2,300 men made it unstable. When it gets up north to Memphis, it starts to rock. And that rocking makes the boilers get so hot that they explode. And all these men go into the water. Over 1,800 of them die. People don't know that this is the biggest maritime disaster in America because someone else was killed that same weekend, John Wilkes Booth. Ever wonder where the teddy bear comes from? Actually, it has its roots here in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So Teddy Roosevelt comes down here November 1902 to hunt a bear. And a man goes out before him and finds a bear, ties it to a tree, and allows Teddy Roosevelt to shoot it. But once he gets there, he could not shoot this bear that was unarmed tied to a tree. A political cartoonist drew Roosevelt with the little bear tied to a tree with a caption called "Drawing the Line in Mississippi," and soon toy manufacturers produced the teddy bears for this instance and named in his honor. So when you hold a teddy bear, its roots come back to Vicksburg, Mississippi. So thank you for joining me on this tour of Vicksburg, Mississippi. We're here at the waterfront. This is the Yazoo River that kind of brings ships into the port here of Vicksburg, Mississippi. But nothing depicts it better than what it looked like at its heyday than this mural right here that shows the riverboat, the Belle of the Bend. When you think about Vicksburg, Mississippi and its place in American history along the Mississippi River as a southern port, I think this mural does the best depiction. I hope you enjoyed this, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Walk with History on YouTube, and don't forget to listen to the Talk with History podcast. We'll go more in depth about this episode and the places we went and the places we ate and the things we saw. Thank you. On to my next Walk with History.